Come one, come all to the place where tigers roar, eagles soar, Broncos run, and dolphins swim, and there might even be some rabbits getting pulled out of hats. It's time for Magic Round. What's going on, guys? Bergs here from the Casual Athlete, back for another week of tips and predictions, and it is Magic Round this week. I'm finally going to get to go to Magic Round. I'm super excited to be at the games at Suncorp on the weekend. Longy and I will be going together, and it's going to be one hell of a weekend, and we have some great games coming up. But before I get into those games and the review from last week, guys, just a reminder to like and subscribe to the channel. We bring out so much content each and every week, and we are running tipping comps via the TBC Live app that you can download in the description below. So make sure that you join in on all the action to win some fantastic prizes. But guys, let's do what we always do and take a look at my tips from last week. Now, I had a pretty decent week, 6 out of 8 tips correct. Only lost the Dogs and Panthers games this week. Those are the two teams that cost me. The Dogs, they were definitely due for a loss here, and it's no shame on them. They've been such a pillar of excellence for the first 6 weeks of the season, but to concede the amount of points that they conceded was a little bit of a worry. I think the Broncos exposed some potential holes in their defensive structure that some other teams are going to take some look at the film from that game and maybe try to replicate the Broncos style. Not a lot of teams can play like the Broncos. They are a very fast, free-flowing, attacking team, but it definitely came to the forefront on the weekend. I just think that this dog side really weren't prepared for the amount of smash mouth football that this Broncos side were going to play. They ran Payne Haas ragged down the middle, used his tank to empty, and they got the best out of him in that first 30 minutes of the game. Coasting from that point in time, I think the Broncos, they scored enough points, they knew that they were in a commanding position, and then they started to take less risk as the game wore on and just kind of shut the Dogs out of the game. I do think for the Dogs, it is a little bit of a concern to look at, but I think they're still one of the best teams in the competition, and especially with all the hype around them. For Broncos to get a win, it makes a massive statement. And the Panthers, man, this year is just going from bad to worse for them. Back in last place, this time outright. They are the only team on 4 points at this point in time. They haven't had a bye yet, but they come into Suncorp this week playing the Broncos, and the schedule doesn't get any easier. And in the game on the weekend, it went back to the same thing that we've been saying about them for the first 5 rounds. They can't score points. Their attacking structure looks way too structured. First of all, they're not playing enough eyes-up football, playing what's in front of them. They think that their old tricks are going to work, and teams have had 5 years to prepare for this team to basically find out, their weaknesses, their comings and goings, and the side this year, it doesn't look as strong on paper, and it's really showing on the field right now. I think the Panthers really need to just trim it back, trim the fat, and just go back to playing a bit more unstructured football. They really struggle in those moments where they're trying to build a game plan. I know there's this whole stop-start narrative that they like to weave into press conferences and things like that, but it's not a good enough excuse to me for a team that's been at the top of their game for the last 4 years. Like, the ball hasn't been in play for 4 years playing against them, so they need to find another way around that. And good teams are meant to adapt. If they can't adapt to this, then maybe there's a few knocks on them more than there probably would be had they not gone down this route to start the season. But guys, just the 2 wrong this week. I think that's a pretty good week considering all things. I know a few people got 7 out of 8. I think one upset cost people the other way. There was a couple of upsets that I picked as well in this one. I know the Roosters probably not a big upset, but big 50-50 game. Raiders also picked that 50-50 game. And then Tigers was a big upset for me as well. So pretty happy with the 6 out of 8. But let's move on to Magic Round. I cannot wait for this weekend. Now, as we know, all the games will be at Suncorp Stadium this weekend, and the first game is between the Cronulla Sharks and the Parramatta Eels. Now, the Sharks come into this game after a 5-day turnaround in a game where they played 88 minutes against a Tigers side that would not die wondering, but you got to hand it to the Sharks. They really knew how to blue chances in that game. Man, I just really thought that they had it in the bag. They were on top for so much of the second half, especially with the wind at their back. The Tigers got a pretty lucky try in the form of Talon De Silva. That kind of pushed it out a little bit, but it was within their grasp. A couple of times, Hazelton was taken down with a great tackle. We had, I think, Daniel Atkinson dropped the ball right on the line as well, and not setting up for the field goal. I want to talk about that for a sec. Like, how do you not do that in a game that you know has been tight the whole time? You're struggling to score points, the other team is struggling to score points, and you've got this massive wind at your back, and you decide to go for the 50-meter field goal. To be fair, Hines nearly kicked it. But there was so much setup play that they could have done prior to that they just completely ignored the field goal for some reason. And it led them into Golden Point, where I was hoping they would lose the game because they put themselves in that position. They didn't need to be there. The Tigers looked well up for it. And then they also ended up getting the victory in Golden Point as well via a penalty, which a little bit dubious. If you're a Sharks fan, you probably don't want that penalty to be given. I think any fan of the game doesn't want that penalty to be given. But rightful end of the game, in my opinion. You go in there, you're kind of twisting, stripping with the ball and the body. Like, Grant Atkins is probably going to call that every single day of the week. For the Eels, they come into this one off the bye, so they're fresh. They have another week of Moses, feeling his body again and making sure that he is right to go for the game. And he was outstanding last time out as well. And for the tip, man, it is super interesting. I would love to go the Eels here, purely because I think the Sharks won't have enough rest in the tank, and Wilton will be out once again for this game. That does weaken them a little bit. And they're not pulling it together, the Sharks. They're just really not. And I'm wondering whether the Eels will take their form from the Tigers game that they played the week before into this game. But they've been pretty good at home, not so good away. That's just my thinking. So what we're going to do is we're going to ignore all that. We're actually going to tip the Eels this week. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to get on the Eels. I think they can get a win here. The Sharks look a bit vulnerable. They don't really look like a team that's going to be this earmark of excellence and win the games that they should win each year. They've known for a couple of years that they've had a decent... It's been known for a couple of years they've had a pretty easy schedule through the year, and then currently not winning those games. I expect them not to win this one as well. Let's go the Eels to win a cracker of a game, 1-12. The second game of Magic Round Friday is the Dolphins taking on the Roosters, and the Roosters on Anzac Day once again got the job done against the Dragons, putting on a big score. Now, that's how I thought that game was going to go. I did not have a doubt in my mind that the Roosters were going to win that game. A lot of people went into it 50-50. I think the Dragons, you've got to treat them as this team that are going to disappoint you when you most need it. And so when you look at it, like, you think the Dragons are definitely going to win a game, tip the other team. Because I can't tell you how many times I did that last year, and I was so off the mark, it wasn't funny. It cost me a lot of points in tipping comps and games. I'm not saying I blame the Dragons solely for that, but I did fall into the trap a couple of times last year and wasn't going to do it in the game last week. I thought the Roosters had that one, and they certainly got across the line. And for the Dolphins, what was that? That second half, it just completely collapsed from the first half. They led 18-10 at halftime, and just did anyone tell the Dolphins that they had to play for another 40 minutes? Because it certainly didn't look like it on the weekend. They come into this one, though. They get a few players back. They get Jeremy Marshall-King, Felice Kafusi, and Max Plath come back into the starting side. So that should definitely bolster their depth a little bit more. I think they struggled against a bigger forward pack. The Tarpany-Horsburgh combination really started to wear on them towards the end of that game, and then they had great outside play on the back of that. Guys like Fogarty, Strange were able to really take their chances. I'm wondering whether the Roosters can do a very similar thing, but they don't necessarily have the size in the middle. I love their edge back row pairing right now. Wong, Crichton, and Sandon Smith had a great game last week, but there's something that I want to notice, or some people to take note of from Sandon Smith, is that I don't feel like he utilizes the players around him a lot. It's a lot of dummy and go for himself, kicks for himself. He seems to be a very ball hog type player, and I don't love that. Yes, he scored 131 points in Supercoach last week, but he's got to make the players around him perform better. And I know he laid on a kick for Tedesco, but had he not been taken out, I think that kick was intended for himself. And he did it a lot on the weekend. So little knock on Sandon Smith. I like him as a player, but he's got to start using the players around him a little bit more. As for the tip here, I'm going to get on the Dolphins. I feel like the Roosters are very rocks and diamonds. They could definitely turn up some rocks this week, and the Dolphins get a couple of really good players back that definitely help their side. So let's go the Dolphins, especially at home at Suncorp, 1-12. The action continues on Saturday with the first game at 3 p.m. where the Knights will be taking on the Rabbitohs. Now, the Rabbitohs have not beaten the Knights since 2022, so the Knights have won the previous two meetings between these two teams, and I think that just goes to show what the kind of team the Rabbitohs had over the last 2 years. It was very clunky since Wayne Bennett left the side. There was Jason Demetriou in there, and they kind of lost their way a little bit. I think to the start of this season, though, they've had some very good showings as a team. They've played right to the final whistle a lot of the time. They almost turned it around against the Storm the other night. They had a couple of sin bins that probably didn't go their way, and the Storm were just good enough to beat them. In this game against the Knights, they come up against a team that aren't doing very well. The Knights, once again, struggled to score points on the weekend. They grabbed a late try, which made it look a little bit more respectable. But again, this Knights side has no direction. They're playing Ponga at first receiver a lot of the time. He's having to be halfback as well as fullback. I don't know whether they're doing that to prepare the Knights to have a guy kind of similar to Dylan Brown in the halves. But if that's the case, then why are they doing it? Because it's not translating into points. I'm not exactly sure what the general consensus is at that club right now. If I was them, I'd be getting rid of Adam O'Brien ASAP, but he has a contract until the end of 2027, I think. So, and there's no get out clauses, nothing. They would have to pay him out, and that is not something that the Knights want to be doing. Terrible contract at the time. I've never liked Adam O'Brien as coach, despite the fact he has made a number of final series. I never considered the Knights a serious team. And yeah, I don't think he's improved them one iota since he's been there, to tell you the truth. And they're in a bit of a tough position coming into the next couple of years. I'm actually going to get on the Rabbitohs this week. I think they bounce back and get a victory here. They weren't too bad last week, and I expect them to be this middle-of-the-road team that can still get a very impressive victory here and there. I'm not saying that the beating the Knights will be an impressive victory. I just think it's a victory that they definitely should get. So let's go the Rabbitohs, 1-12. 5:30 game is the Warriors taking on my North Queensland Cowboys, and these two teams got a fantastic win each last week. I thought the Warriors were outstanding. Once again, they just love holding on to the football. They have one of the best completion rates in the game, and the Cowboys put on a second half blitz to bury the Titans 50-18. Man, I did not expect that from the Cowboys in the second half. 6 unanswered tries they put on. What a performance that was. And for the Warriors, they weren't really troubled against the Knights. The Knights don't really throw too much attack at you, so they had to not really defend that much on their own line. At least what was coming at them wasn't very dynamic. I thought Metcalf, once again, was outstanding. I think Mitch Barnett is starting to pick up his form without Fisher Harris in the side. He's definitely picked up more of a leadership role and feels like it's on him if the team are going to get home each and every week. And I love seeing that from Mitch Barnett. He started to come back into my consideration for Blues selection. He wasn't in there a couple of weeks ago, but I do think that if he keeps playing like this, he might get into that side. I will be releasing a video for that, guys, as well, so make sure that you stay tuned for that one. As for my North Queensland Cowboys, man, I'm really interested as to where their season's heading right now. I love what Todd Payton did with Jeremiah Nene. I thought that he had been out of form really badly, and I wanted him to be dropped. And for some reason, Todd Payton listened to someone in there, or maybe he was watching the exact same thing that I was, is that Nene was not defending properly. Like, he is not good in defense. I still don't like the fact they moved him from the right to the left, but he scored 2 tries on the weekend, and Tom Dearden, man, I actually think that this kid might be the best 5'8" in the country at the moment. He is phenomenal. 5 try assists on the weekend. Like, is it at the point where we start saying he needs to be selected for Queensland, not Cameron Munster? Now, I know Cameron Munster has had a history of playing in big games, but if we always talk about the Queensland team or New South Wales team, whatever origin side, being picked on form, you have to pick Tom Dearden right now over Cameron Munster. I know Cameron Munster's had a good start to the season, but he seems to be off a little bit and seems to rely a lot on Jerome Hughes being in the side. Tom Dearden doesn't do that. Tom Dearden has lost his um, veteran halfback, and he's gotten better. I didn't think it was possible for him to get better. I actually thought that he might struggle a little bit this year, but he's gone to another level, and he is one of the best defensive halves in the competition. Outstanding. I'm actually going to get on my Cowboys this week. I hope they get a victory, and I hope I'm there to see it as well. That will be awesome. And let's go the margin 1 to 12. The last game of Magic Round Saturday is the West Tigers taking on the Dragons. Now, this is a juicy 50-50 game, and it is one that we all will be watching as tipsters. It is definitely one that can get you 1 point closer to the top of the table. Now, I think for the Tigers, it was a great bounce back win last week. They had all the emotion behind them. It's a big ask to play 88 minutes in a game where you're probably not expected to win at all, considering how much noise was created about them in the last 2 weeks. Big bounce back as well from the game that they played against the Eels. And for the Dragons, they had the drop off that I thought they would. They were not great on Anzac Day at all, but they never seem to be great on Anzac Day against the Roosters. It just seems to be one of those things. They come into this one, though, and I really like what they're probably going to be able to produce against the Tigers. I feel like the Dragons can get a victory here. I know the Tigers, we're also waiting to see if Api Coruscant is going to be fit, and for me, he is extremely important to the way the Tigers play football. Yes, they stepped up last week, but big emotion. Pressure will be off them a little bit, and they might relax in this one. And the Dragons, well, they're due for a win. So that's basically the reason I'm getting on the Dragons here. Let's go Dragons to get a win here, 1 to 12. To Sunday's games we go, and we start the action at 1:45 with the Titans taking on the Dogs. And the Titans, God, they're in utter disarray at the moment. I really thought that they started the game quite well against the Cowboys, and that second half, it's kind of like the Dolphins. Did anyone tell them that there was a second half of football to be played in that game? Because it definitely didn't look like they came out of the tunnel. They took Tino off with 20 minutes to go. Seemed like a really weird decision. And after that point, I think they conceded maybe 3 or 4 tries. I found David Fafita once again off the bench to be very ineffective. I know that he was waiting to see whether he was going to be fit for the game, and that's probably why he started on the bench. But once you know that he's fit for the game, just put him in the starting side. It's not that hard. I don't think Chris Randall is offering anything at that second row position, but Beau Fermor was fantastic on that left side of the field. It's very interesting that you've got two guys who tend to play some of their best football in the same position. Beau Fermor had a great game running at Jacob Clifford. In this game against the Dogs, I don't expect that to be continued. I think the Titans, they have a way of scoring points, but they cannot make any defensive or good defensive decisions. I don't know why they're persisting with this Jojo Fafita, Philip Sami thing on the right side. They've been leaking points all season, and they keep naming Jojo Fafita on the wing, but he ends up defending at center anyway. Like, I don't know if Des Hasler's like, oh, this is what we'll do. We'll name Jojo on the wing this week, but we'll play him at center. That'll fool everyone. No, if when you do it every week, it loses its element of surprise. I don't know whether it's like, does Sami just want to wear the number 4 on his back? Is that the go? Anyway, it's a bit confusing to me. For me, the Dogs should get a win in this game. They were a little bit off their game last week. For the first 30 minutes of the game, they really allowed the Broncos to run roughshod over them. I don't expect that to happen in this Titans game. We've already seen these two teams play each other in round 2 with the Titans going down at Belmore, and I expect the same thing to happen once again, and it'll be 3 wins in a row for the Dogs over the Titans. Let's go the Dogs. 13 plus. Moving on to the next game on Sunday, and we have the Panthers taking on the Broncos. Now, the Broncos haven't beaten the Panthers since round 1 of 2023, and it has been 4 games straight since that point. And for this Panthers side, I don't know what they're going to dish up each and every week. They could be this team that has the potential to spring themselves out of form, because we've seen it before. They are fantastic sometimes when their back is against the wall, and it is well and truly up against the wall at the moment. They need to drop the structured play. They're not utilising Blaze Talangi's running game enough. That's the best part of his game. Cleary is definitely coming under a lot more pressure this year. They're not getting the performance out of the guys and their outside backs as well. I'm seeing Casey McLean make really dumb decisions or dumb errors. I don't think Maverick Geyer was the guy that you should have put in at center either on the weekend. They're desperately missing Brian To'o. Don't get me wrong on that front, but I actually think their other winger should be Dane Laurie. I know Dane Laurie possibly not the best defensive option, but he is a first grade player and could be playing fullback at a couple of different clubs in the NRL right now. I'm not sure why they're persisting with Tom Jenkins, Casey McLean, and then the other side is Alamotti and Tungor. I'm just not seeing the production out of those guys right now, and that has been the cornerstone of their play over the last couple of years. They get great production out of their back five guys, and To'o is a big part of that as well. And for the Broncos, they were outstanding last week. I actually thought that Cobbo had a massive crack in the game. It's almost like he came into that one thinking, you know what, I'm going to try and steal this number 1 jersey off Reece Walsh. Now, he's probably not going to do that because we know what an exciting, extremely talented player that Reece Walsh is. But Cobbo definitely put his best foot forward for the role. And some people are starting to talk about him being picked for Queensland in the number 1 jersey, which I don't agree with. I've seen Cobbo at fullback before. I've not liked what I saw until Thursday night last week. So this is a huge game for the Panthers. And I think I've tipped them out of the first 8 rounds. I think I may have tipped them 7 or 8 games. And I've gotten 2 points for that. It's super tough right now. They're going against a team that I think are being a little bit overhyped just because they beat the best defensive side in the competition last week. And I think the Panthers can pull this game out, but they have to move away from what they have been doing the past 4 years. And they need to figure it out mid-season. Don't know if they're going to be able to do that in order to make the finals. But they seem to have the wood on the Broncos and maybe a bit of mental edge on the Broncos as well. So that might come into play for the Panthers. Let's go the Panthers to get a win, 1-12. The last game of Magic Round is the Canberra Raiders taking on the Melbourne Storm. Now, the Canberra Raiders don't have a great overall record against the Storm, but they have had some great clashes in the past, especially down at Amy Park. Now, the Raiders, in my opinion, I love what they've been doing in recent weeks, but they are extremely poor starters. They really need to address that. Otherwise, they come into a game this week against one of the best starting teams in the competition. I would argue that the Melbourne Storm are easily, for the first 20 minutes of games, by far the best team in the competition. They start so hot. They're always on their game early. And if you give them enough wiggle room, they can put a massive score on you. They have the players to do it, and they have done it already at points in this season. And I didn't like what I saw from the Storm last week. I don't love this narrative that they're going to go all the way to the grand final. They're definitely the team to beat. Like, they've got holes. And I don't know whether it's a case of the whole comp getting worse or the whole comp getting better. It's really interesting to me. I thought that a lot of teams heading into the finals last year had some flaws, and Melbourne were the big one for me because they couldn't defend for long periods of time, or their defense wasn't as stout as some other teams that I really thought could win the comp last year. And that is why Penrith ended up winning the comp, just purely because they had better defense and they managed to score more points just than the Storm in that grand final. The Raiders, though, they have the forward pack that could absolutely monster this Storm forward pack and push them around. I love Horsburgh. I love Tarpany. And the guys that are working off the back of that, Fogarty, Ethan Strange, opening up lanes for guys like Nicholson and then Hudson Young as well. I don't love the fact that the Raiders don't really pass to their wingers that much. It doesn't really get to Tamale and Savage. Chris and Tomoko, they're big guys, they're big tackle-breaking guys, but they don't tend to pass the ball to their wingers. But I would say that the Raiders overall have the better roster at the moment just because Harry Grant is out of this side, and he is so important to them. He's their spiritual leader. I didn't think Brodson Garlic offered enough last week. So I'm actually going to get on the Raiders to get an upset win here. I think they'll probably be on the other side of the whistle. The Storm tend to get the rub of the green quite a lot because they are considered this championship side, and it'll be an uphill battle for most of it, but I think the Raiders can get away with a win. Let's go the Raiders, 1-12. So that's it for my tips this week, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your tips down in the comment section below. Please make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. We bring out so much content each and every week. Make sure you download the TBC Live app. The link is in the description below, and we will be doing an event at Magic Round this week as well. So stay tuned to hear some more news about that. I'm Bergs, and I'll catch you on the next one.